Now, a total of 40 public servants and 14 business persons have been recommended for prosecution by the DPP, including 10 business entities that had dealings with the NYS. Here is a list, if I may just play that for you. We have NYS suspects, the public servants. First of all, Lilian Omollo, PA's Public Service, Youth and Gender Affairs. Also, Richard Dubai, Director General, NYS. Sami Mishuki, former Acting Director General, NYS. Also, Nicholas Ahere, Senior Deputy Director, NYS. Wellington Lubira, Acting Director, Finance, NYS. Also, Evans Kundu, former in charge, MTB. Also, we do have, the list continues. There we go. It continues with Peter Moruti, who is a former Senior Superintendent, NYS. Also, we do have Rogers Nzioka, former head of MTB Procurement. Lucas Owino, Internal Auditor, National Treasury. Stephen Riungu, Internal Auditor, National Treasury. Peter Modomi, Internal Auditor, National Treasury. George Ouma, former in charge Operations, Huduma Center, NYS. Also, we have Josephat Njoroge, Internal Auditor, National Treasury. Humphrey Mbogo, Accountant also at NYS. And it goes on. We see also Christopher Simbauni, former Senior Accountant, NYS. Sami Mbugwa, Head of Accounts, MPS, Y&GA. Simon K. Kiru, Head of MTB Procurement. Stephen Manyunzuk, Accountant. Tabitha Ndungu, Accountant. Sophie K. Kinywa, Examiner. Wale Nalo Mulupi, Storekeeper, MTB. Ferdinand M. Odoyo, Storekeeper, MTB. It continues. The list is long also. We have Wellington Matano, First Approver. Also Kezia Mwangi, NYS staff. Stella Biwart. Also we have from NYS staff. Timothy K. Rotich, NYS staff. Jackson Juma. Isaiah Adalo from NYS staff. Also we have David Kirui, NYS staff. Jamal Duba also from NYS. The list continues. We have some more. We have Jamal Duba. We have also Julius Airo. We have Patrick Obunya, Ezekiel Osoro. Also we have Samuel Otieno. Samuel Otieno is an invoicer. The rest were from NYS. Michael Ojiambo, Director of Administration, MPS, Y&GA. Stephen Masharia, Invoicer, NYS. Also we have Don M. Kariungi, IFMIS Buyer. Kenneth Mwadhi, IFMIS Buyer. It goes on, frustratingly long. Also we do have Ann Ngirita, Jeremiah Ngirita. Also we have Phyllis Njeri. We have also Lucy Ngirita. Catherine Mwai. We have Andrin Nyambura, Anthony Wamiti, we have Catherine also Kamuyu, we have Peter Kimani, we have Serang Muguru, James Duita, we have also Samuel Kanai, and we have Yvonne Ngugi and James Katululu, right? We have also Anwo Investment. These are the business entities right now. Also, we have Jawanga Investments. We have Acrod Holdings Limited. And also Kunjiwa Enterprises, Mary Trade Limited. Those are the business entities. Also, we do have Jerry Cathy Enterprises, Fastlink Supplies Limited, and Calabash Food Supplies Limited. Also, Esast Enterprises at 64. Of course, remember also the 62, we had this Fastlink Supplies where one of the directors went seeking also a bailout from court before he was even, of course, given a warning from court or a warrant, or maybe he was given a warning actually to appear in court. So this is what we'll be discussing with our panelists this morning here. And allow me to introduce them. Of course, we're continuing with the topic, sustaining that discussion on graft republic. Where are we headed as a country? And of course, we know many of them that are listed here will appear in court today. We saw the arrest yesterday. And President Uhuru Kenyatta also has sounded a clarion call as far as that is concerned as well. Allow me to introduce to you this morning Boni Khalwale, who is the Deputy Chair of Ford Kenya, all right, Deputy Leader of Ford Kenya. Also, we do have with us, Member of Parliament from Rarieda, that is Dr. Otiende Amollo. We do have with us Isaac Mwaura, who is a member of nominated Senator. We do have Jakoyo Midiwo with us as well, who is a former Deputy Whip of the National Assembly. Also, we do have with us Senator Kimani Wamatangi, who is a Senator from Kiambu. Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning. All right, looking at this list and what has been happening since yesterday when we had that breaking news in the morning that, yes, the Director of Public Prosecution had actually started arresting some of these perpetrators of corruption in this country. They were taken or they were arrested from their homes, as most of them will be appearing in court today. The fight of corruption is still on, but the probing question remains, even from most dailies that we've seen today. Is this just a public relations exercise and then it will taper off and it will be business as usual come Christmas? Let's begin with you, Senator Isaac Mwaura.
Yes, I think Kenyans are very pessimistic about these arrests because they have happened before. We have had very high-profile arrests, and everybody was acquitted. So, as people are calling it NYS season 2, I think they just expect drama. That is the reason why people look very pessimistic. Certainly, the new DCI, Kinoti and Haji, the new DPP, have been baptized by fire because then they have to deal with this. I would want to imagine that they have a concrete case. It's not just the way we hear no stone unturned. Really, these are individuals that are going to be arrested. You can even see from the newspapers this slay queen called Ngireta here, looking very comfortable. You know, it's as if she's going for a catwalk. And you know, you look at these individuals and you wonder, no wonder they have actually supplied air, because which work have they done for Kenyans? And I think we have to have a conversation as a country, because Debarl, as things stand, we are really sending very wrong signals to hardworking Kenyans. We are telling them it doesn't matter. As long as you are connected, you have a phantom company there, you can as well, you know, be an entrepreneur and excel without working hard. So it's really people. Okay, I would want to say that Kenyans have a wait and see, you know, attitude, but they are not very pessimistic about these arrests. Very optimistic about these arrests. Yes.
Are you pessimistic yourself or optimistic?
Certainly, I'm very pessimistic.
Pessimistic
because I know policemen or whoever is investigating, they just need to compromise the evidence. You remember the last NYS case. I don't know, funny enough, I hope these people, some of them will be found innocent, because I had a conversation with Richard Dubai,
yes,
about his predecessor, Githinji. And I was telling him, I thought Githinji was very innocent. He told me in his own mouth that actually Githinji was culpable. I didn't know 1 or 2 years later he would also be arraigned in court, would be also arrested on the same allegations, and it's totally unacceptable. Yeah.
All right, let's hear from Otiende Amollo. Good morning, and good to see you. You've recovered.
Yes,
we've missed you for the last 2 shows.
I have. Yes, I'm happy to be back here. I had a scare of serious cerebral malaria, which you know, Dr. Senator Khalwale was telling me, even for them in the profession, has taken many people. It's one of those things people take for granted. But I think if there's one lesson I've learned, is that malaria can be as dangerous as any other ailment and should not be taken for granted. That said, yes, I have come back at a time that the media is awash with scandals, primarily corruption scandals. Like Senator Mwaura, I am very skeptical of what is going on right now. I'm very skeptical because it is clear that corruption is a malignant tumor, which will not be treated by superficial treatment of the area of infection. You must go to the depth of it. And when we come back to that subject, that depth of it will include a host of things. It will include re-examining the legislative framework and have things like, you know, audit of lifestyle audit, exposure and disclosure of the declaration of wealth by public officers. It will include rethinking the question of EACC. You remember, in all this, EACC is lost. No one is asking why EACC would be so quiet on these matters, yet every year we spend close to 3 billion to fund them. At the last occasion Parliament visited this issue, Parliament recommended that there be vetting of all the staff of EACC, if you remember. Now at that time, the EACC then, the staff through some proxies went to court with the tacit support of the executive. To date, that vetting has not happened. So now we have an establishment which is there, which is being funded, and then is being sidestepped. So either we decide that we do not need it, or we decide to revamp it so that it can do its work. I am skeptical, because while many people might actually be celebrating what's happening right now,
yes,
as a member of the Public Accounts Committee, and only last Friday we examined the PS and the DG, and also as an advocate, I can tell you that what is happening right now might be melodrama that might look good to some people, but it will come to naught. It will come to naught for a number of reasons. It will come to naught first because you will realize that in this scandal, together with the others before that, the role of the cabinet secretaries appears lost. Yet under the Constitution, executive authority is exercised by the President with the assistance of the Deputy and the Cabinet. So the Cabinet actually exercises executive authority. Whenever responsibility must be taken, then it must go as high as the Cabinet Secretary. I am skeptical too, because when an investigator, in this case the DCI, also becomes the whistleblower and also becomes the informer of the media, then there might be a problem.
Yes.
Because it means there's a script that is being controlled. When the PS and the DG appeared before us as PAC, and I can tell you this, although we've not started doing the report,
yes,
it was clear to us that you can think you're fighting corruption, but you might actually be sacrificing those who are trying to fight corruption so that you facilitate corruption. And it was clear to us that for the two, the question is that they need to be out of the way. They need to be out of the way so that the real corruption can then continue. Because in that appearance only, it was clear from their presentation, and I think the media was there,
yes,
that in less than a year, they transformed the NYS to a situation where they save, in their own words, 2.6 billion every year, which then is retained. Now, the question they asked, which is a question we all need to ask, is that, is it possible that those who are supplying the air for the 2.6 billion might actually be fighting back? Because it's important to look at this issue in terms of not just the global figures. It's important to focus on the issues. It's important to focus. What is the role, as Senator Mwaura was saying, Dubai, what is he being accused of? Now, like the lady who's catwalking, we know she's being accused, she got 60 million. Okay? Yes. The one before her cutted away, how much was it 60. in the gunny bags? You know? 60. So you must focus on these two. What is the accusation? From what I can see, the statement issued by DPP, all in the media, is that for the two of them is something along the side of not having acted to prevent a crime or something along those lines. Now, and let me close on this. Previously, in what has now been called NYS 1,
yes,
24 people were charged. The PS and 23 others. They all walked scot-free. Why? Yes. Because the real culprits were not charged. At that time, when they were hauled to court, you know, the public mood came down because people thought, now I hold 24 people are in court, so it is okay. But the real culprits were not there. Now, as you are talking of, initially they said it was 9 billion. Then I had the figure came to 900 million. In the statement of the DPP, I think they were now talking of 54 million. And then they are talking of charging 48 people. What happens when you hold 48 people is that they will all go scot-free, because chances are the real culprits are between 5 and 10. Most likely the others are witnesses. When you take potential witnesses and you hold them in court, they will not testify against the real culprits. The result, they all go scot-free. I am worried that the office of the DPP, which is now occupied by a former investigator, and the investigative office, the DCI, appear to be fused. That is not good. Because the Constitution requires an independent DPP who will look at the evidence and assess and say, this is watertight, or go and tidy up 1, 2, 3 and bring it back, so that when we go to court, you get a conviction. But when they act together, then you hold these people to court, then the evidence will not have been properly reviewed and they are acquitted, then you start blaming the court. I think that this is stage-managed melodrama.
All right. Stage-managed PR exercise. Let's hear from Boni Khalwale. Good morning.
Good morning to you. I think it is going to be very difficult now for anybody to pretend that there's a clear way forward on this matter, because now the waters have been completely muddied. For starters, Kenyans should ask themselves, what is the audit of the outcome of similar action as the one that has been taken by the president on previous scandals? Then, having looked at that audit, you will say this is why it is likely to be the outcome of the current initiative. Unfortunately, Kenyans will remember that the president, also with this kind of melodrama, he came and addressed a joint sitting of parliament and gave us the so-called the list of shame.
Yes.
Where ministers were named, governors were named, and all manner of people were named. Today, nothing has happened to any one of them. Number 2, National Youth Service Round 1. Again, there was a lot of melodrama, and Kenyans can clearly remember, at least on this one, that the prime mover of Round 1 of NYS scandal was Governor, with due respect, Anne Waiguru, the governor of Kirinyaga. Today, she's not only in office, but the same president assisted Anne Waiguru to become the deputy chair of the Council of Governors. The same Anne Waiguru did not just find herself before the voters. She went through the due process, i.e. IEBC cleared her that she was fit to run for public office and all manner of clearances. Now, this being the case, it points to the fact that there is in this country multi-institutional failure. And if institutions have failed to that extent, then the bug will have to step with the chief executive of the republic, the president. Now, Mr. President, I want you to go and down memory lane and learn something from Ghana. Ghana is one of the countries that was very corrupt, and it took a president to change, to create a paradigm shift in Ghana. President Jerry Rawlings, when he found that it was too much, I'm not asking Uhuru to do the same, but there is room for him to learn from it. Jerry Rawlings, when he found that the country could not go on the way it was happening in Ghana, at 1 p.m., because the criminals were as known as they are in Kenya, at 1 p.m., radio of Ghana used to announce that Mr. So-and-so will appear at the stadium of Accra, and they were subjected to firing squad. They did that just on a handful of business people and notorious politicians, and the country woke up. We need to refuse to listen to lawyers, human rights lawyers like Otiende here, about about the sanctity of life and all manner of things, and just handle this so that we create a deterrent. Can you imagine, out of the 47 centers of corruption that nobody is talking about, the corruption that is now going on in county government is far bigger than this one of NYS. Far much bigger than the one of NYS, because they have 350 billion, which at every cent of corruption, there are 47 of them. With due respect to governors, I don't mean all of you, I mean some of you. Something is happening. So when the sum total, when Dr. Robert Ouko, Auditor General, will address this country and tell them what is going on, Edward Ouko, tell this country what is going on in terms of corruption, people will realize that NYS was nothing. Can you imagine if a bold step was just taken on 3, 4, 5 governors? Because they are centers of corruption. I'm not saying they be fired at Uhuru Park or at Kasarani, but they just immediately are thrown out using the due process, and the due process is already there, i.e. we've got the window of impeachment and so on. Then they are thrown out, they are then punished. The other governors will say, hey, something is going on. But when you just go through these and after 6 months, after 2 years, the cases are gone, the people are enjoying their wealth, people say, no, I'll also put my hand in the till.
Yeah, because that's the way to go. Right, let's hear from Senator Kimani Wamatangi. The question, of course, is, as Boni has raised the issue of rollings in Ghana, and I think these are the sentiments that are being raised also by other legislators. We had also a member of parliament from Nyeri town, that is Ngunjiri, saying, yes, even these people now should be brought to the public domain and they should be shot. The same sentiment was held here, I think, by Dr. Eseli as well, that should we go that way, that should be maybe a learning point to many Kenyans and the public officers as far as corruption is concerned. What will be your take?
Yeah, thank you, Debarl. Let me begin first by saying good morning to our viewers and say, well, we had this debate last week and it's been ongoing for a while. It's very sad for this country, very, very unfortunate. And Debarl, my thoughts first are that I think we've been fighting corruption in the wrong way. And I would concur with some of the sentiments by my good friend there, Boni Khalwale and Otiende Amollo. To begin with, Senator Boni Khalwale, remember when you were the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, and I was within that committee. Yeah. And part of the problem we had that time in fighting the corruption that is there in the counties, in trying to expose what was going on, some of the facts that came out was, if you look at the setup of county governments, for example, and extrapolate the internal lives of those fellows, the richest people sometimes in the counties are not even governors. It is procurement officers. It is some of the CECs, the junior officers. And I'll tell you, Debarl, we should be asking ourselves this question. And I know our fashion has always been start top, going downwards in our fight for against corruption. But how deep do we go to fight it, to uproot it? And to me, that would be the first question that we need to be asking, because if you go and look at those vouchers that pay those millions or billions of shillings, whose signatures are on those vouchers, you find that all those officers who have been entrusted, who have been taken to government colleges and been accredited to peruse those documents and okay payments, are the ones who authorize. Two, if you look at, for example, what has happened now in this current NYS case, when you are broadcasting it this morning, you highlighted much on the pending bills, and Boni has gone there. The pending bills in county governments right now are over 100 billion Kenya shillings. Remember, I have said it on this forum before. Before we went to the elections of 2017, the pending bills in counties were less than 30 billion. After the elections, when the Auditor General, when the Controller of Budget have reconciled after the election, then the pending bills are over 100 billion. Now, what does that tell you? That in the span of that 1 year, there was a shot, there was an upsurge of those pending bills by more than 60 billion or close to 70 billion in less than a year. So within that election year, you ask yourself, what has happened? And you see in your clips there, you're saying that part of that 8 billion that is being paid by NYS is in pending bills. The first question is, how old are those pending bills? When were they incurred? That would be a big question that would need to be asked. Was it just during the elections or during the election, at the time of the elections or way before? And you will find that, and because this is evidence that we have, and I'm a member of the Public Accounts Committee now, you'll find that in the last elections, most governors then who lost and others who won gave out LPOs to people. You just come, you have it signed, you pay 10% and you go. And that is how those bills shot from 30 to over 100 billion. And ask yourself what is being done. Two, in this fight, and that's what I would want to concur with what has been said by my colleagues before. When the window dressing is done such that the impression is created that there is a big fight that is going down deep to uproot the corruption that is there, then what happens is we introduce, we make Kenyans become cynical about this fight against corruption. And as a country, we can't go that way. One thing I would want to say about the NYS is that I believe it is time to review first, downwards, the allocation and budget of the NYS. I think the amount that is going to the NYS has become a big invitation for people to know that if you go to the NYS with your, with your tender or with your, demands, you're able to get money quickly. Secondly, we would need to find out in this NYS, because now this is probably 4 years, 5 years running. Who are these officers all the way down? And remember, it is not the first time when there has been a total overhaul of a department or even a sector of government. Why can't there be a complete overhaul over the NYS? But finally, let me make these two points too. We also need to be careful, as Dr. Otiende Amollo was saying, that we do not have the fight against corruption being used, on the other hand, either for settlement of scores, be they political, or for purposes of intentionally wanting to bring down people that we don't like, or because they are from certain areas or communities, because that's something that has been happening. And also to ensure that still the rule of law is followed. Now let me finalize by this, Debarl. In the newspaper today, I think somewhere in page 4, you see that there's a story about Jakoyo, the former town clerk of Nairobi, who was jailed. And if you go down to the streets of Nairobi now, the word in the street, and I have no reason to want to fault the judiciary because they follow the law as it is, but if you go down to every person, including Jakoyo here, who was just speaking to me a few minutes ago when he flipped through the newspaper, the word around is that that guy should not have gone to jail. That the fellow, Jakoyo, did not even take a penny, even their own colleagues here in town, because we are politicians in this place, so you hear the word, that the real culprits who took the money went away with it. Scot-free 100%, others more than 350 million pocketed. The guy never took a penny. But you see, he's the one who is in jail. And that is a question that we must be asking ourselves. What in this fight against corruption, would we, or is it possible to have people, and especially the people who are at the top, if somebody wants to bring them down, can somebody plant a bomb under their feet?
Thank you.
So that eventually let's
hear from Jakoyo.
Thanks, Debarl. It's nice listening to Wamatangi and my friend Mwaura, whom I have not seen this year or since. I see you all the time. But Mwaura I have not seen. But it's nice to hear you guys just blabbering. It's interesting. And the reason I said,
after all the effort Wamatangi has put forth, you're saying he's blabbering.
I only agree with him as far as the credentials of the former town clerk is concerned. That I agree with him, because I actually I thought he was one of my favorite civil servants. He cleaned up Nairobi. There were no more street urchins. Things were headed in the right direction. In fact, the combination of what's his name of the clerk who was jailed, Jakoyo and Michuki, made me regain confidence in Kenya. That has dissipated. But I'm saying they're blabbering because these two gentlemen just voted for somebody who was buying wheelbarrows at 8,000 shillings as a speaker. When you want to fight corruption, clerks don't steal in this country without politicians. So when you say some of the governors are not are innocent. I saw Boni Khalwale in another forum last week saying, or praising Governor Kivutha Kibwana. You know, name them, name the good people. Let us shame the rest of them. And don't worry, Boni, if you don't want them at Uhuru Park or Nyayo Stadium, take them to Bukungu.
For example.
And just blow them. You know, these are criminals, you know. But let us stop this direction of trying to talk about the small people and leaving the big people. I can tell you theft in this country is political. It's because the politicians are superior to the civil servants. So they are ordering them to steal. So at the risk of sounding like I'm the protector of the Jubilee government, I want to give 10 out of 10 to Uhuru Kenyatta. He has finally realized that EACC does not belong in Kenya. Remember how we established Anti-Corruption Commission when Mwaura was made the corruption czar? It was to please the West. So it was, they didn't mean to fight corruption. Moi never meant it. And Moi would never have fought corruption, because I think his name and corruption and the origin of it are synonymous. That is the language we need to be talking. Now, EACC, now that it has been bypassed, we must thank the new young man who is the DPP, the new director of CID, and Kameru. I was in the last intelligence committee of parliament. I find him to be intelligent. He talks what he means, what he talks, and they need to make more arrests. What I would like to say, Debarl, is that in this NYS scandal, you will never solve NYS 2 without solving 1. The thieves are the same. I said here last Tuesday that there is a direct line of people. There's connection between 1 and 2. The people are the same. Who insisted? We were in parliament alongside me and Mwaura. You know, we fought this battle when a group of MPs just insisted you must add money to NYS. Every supplementary budget, we added money to NYS. It was money to be stolen. I was there when somebody said, let us plant, let's give money for the planting of trees. I said, how are you going to check balance? Which trees were planted in Dori Secondary School in my village? You knew they were putting money to steal. How I wish the 10 out of 10 that I am giving the president will mean that he does not think just mere arrests will solve the issues of corruption. We must keep arresting. We must keep arresting. And let me tell you, we must solve the obvious ones so that Kenyans can believe the government can do it. And I think we have a very good opportunity. Begin by abolishing the so-called EACC. Abolish it. You cannot have some amorphous body trying to perform the work of police.
Thank you.
And then you put a bishop to run it. You know, those things are not in charge. This is real, because our people are suffering and suffering under this thing of corruption.
Right, and still, of course, on that, President Uhuru Kenyatta has vowed to deal firmly and decisively with all unethical people caught in the web of corruption. The president, reiterating his anti-graft message, said all Kenyans entrusted with responsibility must be ethical and ready to serve with a high sense of morality. He said ethics is not about getting big positions of authority in government, but how those entrusted with the responsibility exercise that authority. Let's just listen in.
We are no longer going to tolerate in our country unethical people. If you have been given responsibility, you need to understand that that responsibility is a responsibility to serve and not to be served.
Sentiment there from the President. Let's hear from, we'll come to you, Boni. Let's hear from Otiende Amollo. The question that you'd asked about EACC not really responding and why they've been actually milling out on this, I think the stories that I had or I read was that EACC was also blocked from this NYS scandal to actually probe it. Maybe the question we should ask ourselves is, what is the role of the Public Procurement Oversight Authority? Because I'm here at the website. If we just pick up the website and we see their legal, I should say, mandates of public procurement oversight, it says it shall ensure that procurement procedures are complied with as laid down in the Public Procurement and Assets Disposal Act and its regulation. It monitors the procurement system and reports on its overall function. It initiates public procurement policy. It provides manual and standard tender documents. It develops, promotes, and supports training and professional development of staff involved in procurement. And this is a website. This is a mandate of the Public Procurement Oversight Authority. We know the Independent Police Oversight Authority looking over the police. But what is the sole function of this? Because in the whole picture where we hear about these procurement scandals, we've never had what is the sole mandate of the Procurement Oversight Authority. So if we hear that procurement officers, they've been embroiled in this corruption scandals, you know, issuing out tenders irregularly, not following up, of course, the procurement disposal, Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act. They are licensed, aren't they?
Well,
yeah, they're licensed. The question is, they are licensed. Some of them actually are members of the Kenya Institute of Supplies Management. Why can't we actually cancel the licenses of these procurement officers in the first place? And what we can question this morning also, what is the role of a Public Procurement Oversight Authority in all these procurement systems that we're hearing? Because they say, I read somewhere that, yeah, they're actually here to try and streamline procurement system here in the country, which was chaotic, you know, since independence. But we still see, this is the loophole that we have in this country, where people pilfer and they have the clammy fingers to come and steal from the public. There is where we should direct our eyes.
Thank you, Debarl. So let me address that question together with the two others that have emerged. One is the President's speech as captured there. Two is the question of the EACC, as Jakoyo and the others have spoken to. And third is the Public Procurement Oversight Authority. Let me start with the President's speech. What the President said there is the right thing. It is the language of the Constitution. It is the language of the initial laws that we enacted. The problem is, it is not the language the President and others have spoken consistently, especially before election. So that what we actually have is we don't have public officers, including politicians, who are serving the people. We have people who have been put in those positions based on their own culture. For the appointed positions, they were put either because you are on the right side of the political divide or you have the right godfathers. For the elected officials, it is because you have the right of affiliations. What we have, and that is the ultimate problem we have, is that we have a hustler's culture. You need to examine that hustler's culture. All these people, including the lady, my friend Senator Mwaura was saying is catwalking. If you asked her, she would be saying, I'm a hustler. Yeah, because indeed she is. But who is a hustler?
You're looking at that V8. If the V8 that we have on the front page of the Star.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is part of the hustler's culture.
This is the hustler's culture.
Yes, that is part of the hustler's culture. When you have a hustler's culture, and that is the culture of saying, you do not have to parade your academic credentials. You do not have to demonstrate what legitimate business you do. You only have to show that I am successful somehow. All these scandals are premised on that. And when some of the highest offices in the land are premised on the hustler's culture, this is what you end up with. That's number one. Number two is the Public Procurement Oversight Authority.
Yes.
That authority, unfortunately, first of all, usually comes at the tail end. It is not present when things are going on. it only comes to review. That is the Public Procurement Oversight Authority. It reviews the procurement. But it only reviews if somebody has raised an issue. So the problem with most of these so-called scandals is that when there is collusion, nobody will raise an issue. They only raise an issue if somebody fails to meet their end of the bargain. And that will be irrelevant if no complaint was raised in the first place. But the other problem with the PPOA is the doublespeak. If the PPOA was to be strict in all procurements, we would have solved a lot. But the problem is that there are enough procurement. There are many procurements where there is interference, including by government. And I don't usually like to go back to the question of elections, but just take the elections issue, for example. The last 2 cycles of elections, virtually everything that was procured by the IEBC failed to meet the procurement guidelines. And any time it was raised, you'd be told either, one, that it was direct tender, government to government, where the government itself flouts all the procurement laws, or two, that is one which is allowed, what is called this, when it's urgent and special negotiation. So the PPOA finds itself that in certain strategic places, when anybody raises an issue, they're told, no, that is not part of what you need to look at. In this NYS, when I was looking at the DPP's statement, one of the things he was saying that all the procurements did not follow the procurement processes. But if they didn't follow, did we just realize now? They didn't follow, and this I agree with Honorable Jakoyo Midiwo, because NYS was set up to be a looting basket. You need to ask yourself why NYS would move from a budget of about 1.6 billion in 2022-2013, and suddenly you come to 25 billion. When it is set up to be a looting basket for campaigns, then you must expect that will happen. Now, lastly, the EACC.
Right. Can we just back on the EACC? We take a short break. You talk about capital punishment. That is Jakoyo Midiwo, but still, something has to be done. I know you're not in Parliament, but we have senators. We have also a member of Parliament here as well. Chep Kemboi Kugo, more like NYS scam list. And yes, we want the big fish and not the omena. Also, we have Angelo Benson saying, how ni omena bado? Wapi wale wakubwa? This will not solve corruption when we hide the grandmasters that run the show. And Bing Charlie said this corruption wave is so intense it will cripple Kenya if the political condemnation by top leadership is not matched by action. We have more. I'll be, of course, looking at that. So we promise to circle back with you, Otiende Amollo.
Yes. I was coming to the question of the EACC. Unfortunately, I would not be one, like my friend Jakoyo Midiwo, to celebrate the circumvention of EACC. Because that is to celebrate the fact that we put about 3 billion annually, and we are comfortable in saying that body cannot do its work, but let them just earn the salary and keep the money. That can't be right. Also, unfortunately, you cannot wish away the EACC currently, because it is ingrained in the Constitution. And if you are to deal with it, you must amend the Constitution, and it's one of those provisions that require a referendum. Therefore, instead, rather than think and wish it away, I would be one to focus on it properly. There are many countries, and by the way, if you look at, there are many countries, including in Africa, the idea of having a specialized anti-corruption agency is not just unique to Kenya. It is in very many countries. And the idea is you have a body that is beyond reproach, that can focus on corruption, especially the mega corruption and the major ones, including not just prosecuting, but also looking at the systems. And the assumption was that the police, in dealing with everything from traffic matters, to people who are exhuming bodies because they were wrongly buried, to all, will be lost in so much that they might not focus on this. The problem is not the idea of having an ethics and anti-corruption commission. The idea is the persons who have been entrusted with that job. And therefore, if we were to think that the DCI or whichever team that we now have, it is doing such a good job, then transplant them and make them the EACC. Deal with the issue of the personnel at EACC, whether it's the commissioners or whether it's the, the staff, but don't wish them away. And I, for one, think, and this is where I depart from my friend Dr. Boni Khalwale, the law is your ally, is not your enemy. The problem we have had is non-application of the law, selective application of the law, or misapplication of the law. That is the problem we've had. But if we could go back to that, we would be quite okay. The little that needs to be amended of the law, at least there are few things, but very few. For example, all the state officers, including all of us here who are in parliament, we file our wealth declaration. But the law as it is right now is that you file it and it's kept somewhere in the speaker's office, unopened, because the law prohibits disclosure of that declaration of asset. Now, all you need to do is take all these leaders, from the president to the lowest person, and say, let us see where you were 15 years ago. Let us see your consistent declaration of assets. First, let us verify whether it is true, before you even find whether one has a scandal. And secondly, describe to us how you've gained all this. More than, I think, 50% of all of us, politicians and appointed public officers, will fail the test. That is the proper beginning. So I think that we need to go to the foundation. In fighting this graft, we will not solve anything by coming to the window and find that there's a leakage somewhere and we are trying to patch it. Right. We must come to the foundation.
Let's come back to Isaac Mwaura if we come to you. Right.
Yeah, I think, Debarl, people are saying, I wish the money landed in my account. So that tells you Kenyans are salivating and envying those whose monies increased overnight. Obviously, with the exception of the lady who returned the money. And that tells us that we are a deeply corrupt society. And it's about our value system. We have evidence that when you steal money from the public, the next time you'll come by your way into a political position and superintend over the fight against corruption. Certainly, a very good example is the fact that Anne Waiguru was mentioned heavily in the NYS scandal, and today she's a governor, and defeating a veteran, crusader for reform, one Mother Karua. That is a ridicule that we are being, subjected to. That what matters in this country is not what you stand for. It's not about your value system. As long as you are rich, you can be a Sonko, you can be, people who, in my opinion, should not even be anywhere near public office. Right. But they are the ones who really, are walking around and making us look like fools, And it is very discouraging. It's very discouraging because you are being told, you, Mwaura, don't stand for anything. As long as you can come and bribe us, we will elect you even to the highest office ever. Leave alone your qualification. In fact, you can even go to River Road and get a degree and we will still celebrate you. Yeah. The rise of the barbarian in our public office, you see, these are individuals. If you look at even the quality of lecturers who are demonstrating, you can tell those are River Road degrees. There's a sense of lack of, decorum. So much so that we think that we institute a retired bishop at the helm of anti-corruption, abracadabra, we shall solve our problems. Debarl, I think what we need to agree is that yes, it is actually possible to look at the big fish. And it is very political to say, Mwaura, today you stole, and so therefore you are in. But the truth of the matter is, the people who get instructions from politicians, like Gakuo, I'm afraid that he's in jail. But people like Gakuo needs to go to jail. This is my opinion. They need to go to jail so that tomorrow you don't get instructions because you've received a call from somewhere. Yes, you may not be found because it is facilitated. People have actually realized that you can have very good financial audits that show that you have constructed a road somewhere and there's nothing on the ground, and the auditor will come and go. You see? So we have to have a situation where Americans, how they have succeeded, and I was privileged to go through their systems, I think in January. There is what we call performance evaluation, where you look at exactly have we gotten value for money. And this is properly provided for in Article 227 of our Constitution, in Section 30 of the Public Procurement and Disposal of Assets Act. The problem is that Kenyans also are not very keen about development, and that we have to be candid with ourselves. Kenyans would want to, quick fixes. They have become so pessimistic about performance that what the matter is, what am I seeing now? And you can tell what is the kind of electorate. Sometimes people people vote for the leaders they want. People get the leaders they deserve. Because if today you have a story pontificated by the media, from grass to grace, where you are rich, what are you telling people? 50% of our KCSE graduates got D+ and below. You are giving them hope when you have televangelists telling you that you can plant a seed today and tomorrow you wake up rich. These people are not going to change overnight. They themselves, they also want that miracle. And the miracle is in this slay queen I'm seeing here. This will be the first person to be killed.
All right, let us hear from Boni Khalwale.
Who is the slay queen? Can I understand?
we shall not broach that subject here. Well, in context of NYS, who's the slay queen? Right, let's just rest it. Let's hear from Boni Khalwale.
I want to start from where my brother Wamatangi left, when he lamented how it came to pass that the budget shifted from 1.8 billion to NYS to 25 billion. Wamatangi, there is wisdom in remembering how it came to pass. You know how it came to pass? In the Senate, Senator Mutula Kilonzo Jr. and Dr. Boni Khalwale, we were lone voices when we were fighting the increment of this budget to 25 billion. And I remember, go back to the Hansard, Jubilee, led by Professor Kindiki, supported vehemently by Kimani Wamatangi, said that this money must be increased to 25 because of our youth and blah, blah, blah. And we said, you are now planting the seed for corruption. Now, you are seeing why it is important that when we are debating in the House, we must not debate with an aim of supporting everything so long as it comes from our side of the coalition. Point number 2, President Uhuru has told us just now that unethical people are not going to be tolerated. Congratulations, Mr. President. If you know that, then why don't you act on the politicians? Mr. President, the Golden Buck scandal, the people who drove it, may he rest in eternal peace. Saitoti was one of them, and other ministers. The Anglo leasing, the people who drove it were ministers, Murungaru, Miraria, Kraitu, and others. Mr. President, Grand Regency Hotel and Safaricom scandal, it was driven by Kimunya, minister. Mr. President, NYS round 1 was driven by Anwai Guru. So if you are saying you want to deal with unethical people, already from those scandals that I've enumerated, it is clear that the people who drive it are the politicians at the top. So you should be dealing with your ministers now on the issue of NYS. Point number 3, you have raised the important issue of the PPOA. The PPOA, together with the Public Procurement and Disposal Act, there is nothing wrong with that act whatsoever. Is sufficient to address our concerns as it is.
Yes.
The problem is the culture of impunity. I mean, when the president says, and is supported by the former Prime Minister, Right Honorable Raila Odinga, that they are going to get to the root of this problem, and the president is saying it in the presence of members of parliament whose companies did tendering with NYS, members of parliament of Jubilee. Raila is saying it when members of parliament of ODM did tendering with NYS. What are they telling us? They know those people. Point number 4. People are challenging us that what did you do when you were MP, Jakoyo, Khalwale, when you were MP and Senator? I want the public to know that I responded to the problem of cattle rustling and this corruption menace by drafting a motion that was eventually going into a bill so as to provide that cattle rustlers should face capital punishment and that people involved in this mega corruption scandal should similarly face capital punishment. And you know what happened? The process of making law is such that you have to get concurrence from the office of the Speaker. The Speaker told me that Khalwale, this would not be in the spirit of the new constitution that says, you know, the right to life and whatnot, and therefore your bill and motion will not see the day of the light. I mean, the light of the day. My final point is just to make people realize how we belittle ourselves. Simply because in Cuba, they have been able to address the issue of corruption. Cuba looks like a big brother. Kenyans don't know that Cuba is a tiny country that relies on little oil and mainly farming of sugarcane, but they have a GDP of 87 billion shillings per year, and they have a small population of only 11.5 million people. When you compare this to Kenya, we have a population of 45 million people and a GDP. Kenyans don't know how big we are. A GDP of $70 billion. That is as by the World Bank last year. Now, if we have a GDP that is only $10 billion different from that one of Cuba, and we have a bigger population than Cuba, and we are more resourced than Cuba, why would we be looking at Cuba as a big brother, going there to look for silly things like doctors when we have enough doctors in this country? So it's a question of addressing the culture of free money. People who call themselves the entrepreneurs and the blah blah and the hustlers and what have you, they are now living on the new narrative that you can get free money. Even Mwaura, when you mentioned the issue of lecturers, you reminded me very quickly of how lecturers go to demonstrate for salary increment in the streets. Today, if Professor Nelson Wanyama Awori was to wake up, he would be shocked to know that a lecturer is demonstrating for pay increment. Professor Ada Bell would never have gone to the streets to demonstrate. Professor Nimrod Bwibo would never have gone to the streets to demonstrate. Why? Because professors make their money, millions of shillings, from research. Our guys have refused to do research.
And innovation.
They want to get free money.
Thank you very much. Let's say from Wamatangi as we wind up on NYS, and we want also to bring up the issue of, yes, the Public Procurement Oversight Authority. I still want to know, yes, what does it really do? Because that is the answer I'm not really getting from a panelist this morning. And we also have the National Anti-Corruption Steering Committee. These are organizations that actually, they actually paid from the exchequer, yet we do not know their sole function as far as fighting corruption is concerned in this country. Okay,
Debarl, why don't I first answer Prophet Khalwale this morning, because you heard how he narrated how he foresaw and forecast what would happen. But anyway, fair and good point made. You see, my point is this, Dr. Khalwale, that we cannot sacrifice our intent, our determination as a nation to resolve some of the issues that we know we must take action on to change the lives of our people, especially down under. And what I'm saying is this, Dr. Ali, on that issue that you raised, why was the budget for NYS then increased. But I also want to concur with, or rather to still stand by the point that I made earlier, that I think by now it is time to relook at, is that increment of that budget to that amount useful now? Does it do what it should? But however, let's also be clear that the intention, the realization that our young people in this country require an intervention that is out of the ordinary. Because if you look at the biggest ailment that we have right now, onwards as a society, as a community, is because we have bereft our youth. We have ignored our youth. And I believe that was a good cause then to be looked at. But what has happened, and what we should be addressing now in this fight against corruption, is those few that think that they can always intervene when a good cause has been identified and resources deployed so that they can siphon, or that they can come and perforate small holes or big ones so they can benefit from. And let me say this, you know, this sickness, this epidemic of looting public resources, that has no manners. It has no area where it's only you know, secluded to. For example, in the NYS, people steal from hospitals where the sick go to get medication. I mean, even remember you saw the other day, and I don't know the merit of it, but even a doctor being accused of stealing a heart to sell of a patient. I mean, it's that low. You get what I mean? I mean, this it's a culture. But two things, Debarl. One, you see, every time in our ordinary legislative business, you hear these people have flown here, like when Jakoyo was in the House, flown to Cuba. You remember that's where he was sometimes. No, Panama. Before we went to the elections, I recall, to benchmark. Others have gone there, where and where. You know, you want to ask yourself, why as a nation don't we benchmark on nations and countries that have succeeded in the fight against corruption? And I want to say this. If you look at all nations, most of the nations that record and register the lowest rates of corruption in this country, from the Scandinavian countries, look at Switzerland, look at countries like Norway, look at countries like Japan. One thing that they have done firmly is build a more equal society, an egalitarian society, whereby you have people who can claim, who can stand and say that we belong to this country. But if you look at the fabric, at the structure of our society, right from when we became independent, when we had the authority to govern ourselves, we started building a society of the richest, the poorest, and the middle, and the in-between. And the problem is the majority are at the bottom pyramid. And so that society continuing to be, you know, to be built, to be emphasized that way, we cannot help but continue to suffer the kind of corruption you are seeing as suffering, unless we intentionally decide that we are going to bring down, to trickle down whatever is held in bulk at the top and bring it down such that we can elevate the levels of our people down there. Then that would continue. Lastly, on this issue of PPOA, Debarl, you know, I believe the people who are within, the members we have within the PPOA do not know really, or have not read what their mandate is in law. If you ask any person who does procurement in this country, or any entity, what role does the PPOA play? They only know that PPOA plays only the role of an arbiter, such that when you have a case to take, that I tendered here, I was denied the tender, or there was an misappropriation, or the process was not correct, that is when the PPOA comes in. And if the law was to be followed, if the PPOA, as you said earlier, was to do their work, then absolutely most of these scandals would have been stopped somewhere in the middle.
Thank you.
But unfortunately, I believe they have not been able to do the work that
Thank you. Let's leave it at that. And of course, just to remind you, yes, the role of Public Procurement Oversight Authority, the legal mandates are here. I shall just run you by them again. Legal mandates of Public Procurement Oversight Authority. First, it shall ensure that procurement procedures are complied with as laid down in the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act and its regulation. If I may just pick up that from and from the laptop. And of course, it monitors the procurement system and reports on its overall function. Right? Let me try and minimize it so that you can see it clearly. And it says also it initiates public procurement policy. It provides manuals and standard tender documents. It develops, promotes and supports training and professional development of staff involved in procurement. That is the sole function of the public procurement oversight.
You bypassed me, but I have to say something.
I bypassed you?
Yes.
Very briefly.
Yeah. No, you can't say briefly if you let Wamatangi talk for 10 minutes. Well, first of all, let me tell Wamatangi that I've been to Panama twice.
Yes.
But to attend an anti-corruption conference, it is on my CV. So that's why this is relevant.
You're benchmarking on corruption?
No, I was not. It was an international conference, nothing to benchmark. I was a contributor.
When we're talking about benchmarking on corruption, are you meaning that we are comparing standards of Kenya and Panama? You know, you need to clarify for Kenyans. Benchmarking corruption. What is benchmarking corruption?
No. In fact, the last.
Of course, I'm saying this in my time.
I understand you. But the last conference I attended, if Wamatangi wishes to know,
thank you.
I was a panelist alongside Ocampo. But let me say this PPO thing, Debarl, that is one organization we need to abolish. The role of PPOA that you have just read, what is the work of commercial courts? You know, there is no, in the procurement procedures, there's nowhere where they check that the procurement is procedural. People go to complain. So when you have an amorphous body like the EACC, for the same reason, we have too many bodies that are inhibiting the smooth administration of justice in this country. PPOA, look at it, if I may just tell the world, you know, the former secretary is my current governor. And guess what?
The former secretary of
PPOA. You can understand how it was, it's history.
And for the benefit of the viewers who don't know your governor?
Rasanga. Let me tell you. Is one of the people we keep complaining about graft. So it was crafted to shield graft, or it is not a body we need. Lastly, let me congratulate Boni for realizing that the handshake is working. Because all this is happening because the former Prime Minister says,
thank you,
we are going to deal with it. And the President has said, and it is one of the 9 items which was listed during the handshake. Unfortunately for Boni and his ilk, they seem to be thinking that the handshake is about power sharing. It's about sorting out the messy things. We will even deal with IBC and all those. If you didn't know, I know. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Another body that maybe we should also just, as I mentioned, bring to light, that is meant to be fighting corruption, is the National Anti-Corruption Campaign Steering Committee. And of course, this is from my government. Maybe if you're not really aware about, we have a National Anti-Corruption Campaign Steering Committee urging graft lords to face the law. This was way back in 2016. But also they've been very mealy-mouthed about all that is happening with corruption. And some of the officials are there. You can see them from the National Anti-Corruption Steering Committee. So we have many bodies, but still corruption is a niggling worry in this country. Right. I have reactions also on social media. We have Dixon Gaduri saying, the solution has been given by Isaac. It's the values. Getting rich is the swag. Getting wealth is old school. Also, we have Nicholas Owiti Oginga saying corruption, nothing has been done, nothing will be done, and people will get away with it normally. Let's legalize it so that everyone can enjoy it in his and her capacity, right? That is Nicholas what he's saying. And of course, we have also Kalia Kipchirchir. So the wealth declaration by the civil servants just get stored and opened, and the law prohibits anyone from opening. We have John Gidanga saying Uhuru must now be lenient with high priest of corruption. He must be firm and severe with these officials, thieves. he has the support of the everyday people. He must not be, I think. Then we have, I think we'll read that later, Paul Ngugi saying EACC has no capacity, will not have the effect needed to diminish corruption as DCI and DPP revamped is all that is required. We have also Kabando, he's saying this round it will succeed because President is determined, even as most MPs are feeble in the support of current crackdown. 2015, some were compromised to frustrate probe, fight those who call for accountability. NYS, DCI, DPP helping President. EACC seems in a nap. And we have also Rashid Abdullahi saying, I fear the cost of bringing NYS scandal culprit to book might exceed the actual money lost in the scam itself.